Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Serious. What's the creepiest encounter you or someone you know has had? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Lived in a trailer park for a couple of years, and one night I was sitting up in bed facing the window watching TV on my phone. I happened to look up as I saw a shadow walking between mine and my neighbor's yard. It was really late at night, and knew no one would be outside at that time. I texted my neighbor telling her about it and asked if she had seen anything. A few nights later, me and a couple of the neighborhood women are walking down the little road in the trailer park when we started to hear twigs and branches being snapped. It stopped when we stopped walking and continued if we took a step. Since it was dark and across the road, we couldn't see what it was. Freaked us out a little bit. Then things got weird. Stuff outside would go missing, and on some nights a fire could be seen across the road and the creek near a big cave on the mountainside. Whenever someone would loudly say they see a fire within minutes, the fire would be out. We all thought a hobo was living in the cave, and that possibly was harmless. But that changed when two guys were walking the trailer park late at night and came across a man trying to break in my windows. From what the guys told the police, this strange man was standing outside my kid's bedroom window, trying to lift it out, when they screamed at him, and he took off running for the mountain. Police searched around the trailer park and under a few trailers, where they found a makeshift bed, a bucket, and a flashlight under my neighbor's trailer. When I was little, like maybe 8 or 9, I was in the woods at my grandparents' house in the Poconos with my sister, and some dude just started following us. Not chasing us, just following. Keep in mind, this was in the middle of butt-F nowhere and on private property, so it's not like he had a reason for being there. We ran for a bit, then stopped and waited a few minutes to see if he was behind us, and sure enough, he was there again. He never even said anything to us, he just stared and followed, sometimes running towards us. I never found out who it was. My grandfather would let buddies hunt on his property, but he had no clue who the guy was based on what I told him what he looked like. My mother worked in home care for the elderly and or disabled. Part of her job involved cooking meals for people, but sometimes she'd find their kitchen empty and would have to take the hungry person grocery shopping. It was against the rules. She could have been fired for it, but she wasn't going to leave somebody's elderly granny alone in an apartment without food. So, one afternoon, just coming back from the store with this little old lady she was helping, a man pushed his way into the apartment behind them. He had a weapon, a gun I think, ordered them to stay quiet, ordered the old lady out of the room, and then started trying to get my mom's jeans off. Up until that point, Mom was mostly worried about her client getting hurt, but right then she suddenly remembered some Bible verse about how women are supposed to yell and make noise during a first situation like that so nobody can claim it was consensual. So she started screaming while trying to fight him off. And that's when the old lady tottered out of her bedroom, armed with pepper spray. She got the jerk right in the eyes, and he went stumbling out the front door. She loved my mom, and couldn't stand to hear her terrified screaming, so found a way to save her. The cops never caught the guy, even though he left his coat behind and everything. I think there's a good lesson here. If you're good to people, and in times of need, people may be good back to you. One time in the middle of the night when I was maybe 6, I was sleeping in my room that has a window right to the left of my bed, and somewhere in the middle of the night I heard my window open, which at this point I'm going to say 4 feet away from me. I look up terrified, and there's a guy in a completely black costume looking at me. He asks if there's someone with a certain name in the house. I say no, not wanting anyone to get hurt. I went to tell my dad. He was terrified the next morning. Our neighbors caught him. Apparently he was looking for his ex or something that had lived in my house. I have no idea what he was going to do, but luckily no one was harmed. I was almost kidnapped when I was 15. I was walking home from school late since I had after-school club. Normally I would get a ride since my high school is pretty far, but no one in my family could pick me up. I was walking down the boulevard when a man in black pickup driving the opposite direction of me waved and honked at me. I thought nothing of it until he U-turned and started driving next to me as I was walking. He asked me if I wanted a job. Now, this is when I started to know what's happening here, and I needed an excuse fast. so I pretended to not know what he's saying and told him my English is not good. I'm actually an Asian immigrant, but I speak fluent English since I grew up in the US, lol. Once I neared the crosswalk, he quickly drove in the parking lot on the corner and kept trying to lure me in his car. This is when shit gets terrifying for me. He took out a fat stack of $100 bills. It actually scared me because this man could have anything on him if that stack was real. I just gave him this look, which told him I'm not stupid, and ran in the neighborhood once the crosswalk lit, since he couldn't get to me in time from the parking lot. I kept running in the neighborhood until I'm pretty sure I lost him. Also, I stood outside the house that had people working on the lawn just in case he was still following me, and I was tired from running. After maybe 5 minutes, I went back to the avenue since I need to walk through there to get home. Luckily, a mom was walking with her kids, so I just walked near them on the way home. After that, I never walked home from my high school ever again. I just waited late on campus if I needed to or get a ride from my friends, since this is when they were getting their licenses. I'm 21 now, and I still get very anxious whenever I see a black pickup truck. If I have to walk somewhere, I cover myself or make myself look more masculine. If I didn't have luck that day, I wouldn't be having a normal life or even be alive right now. So back on Halloween on 2019, my friends and I decided, let's go to this abandoned nursing home for shits and gigs. So we start the journey, but on the way there we see a duplex, 1-floor building in the woods abandoned. So we decided, stop there real quick to explore since it's Halloween. So we adventure the property for about 20 minutes and we decide, let's go back through real quick and see if we missed anything. So we head back towards the first door we went to. Right as we approached, it was the most blood-curdling scream broke the absolute silent night. I'm talking metal to a chalkboard type of scream that was one continuous note. We absolutely hightailed it out of there, literally tripping over sticks and shit trying to get the F away from whatever we heard. We left there and went to the nursing home first mentioned. Nothing interesting happened, so when we were riding home, we stopped at that building again to see if it was a siren or if something was behind the building. We searched for 20 minutes behind, in front of, and every room again, and the sound never repeated itself. Haven't touched an abandoned building since, because that shit was terrifying. When I was 17, I worked at a candy store at the mall. This guy stayed from opening till closing and kept trying to talk to me. We had great convos. I felt uncomfortable though when he stayed for closing and waited for me to finish. He even helped me close. We walked to my car and I stupidly drove him to his car. I'm lucky nothing bad happened, but then the next day came. I had to open that day and he was waiting there for me. He brought me McDonald's and noticed I was slightly annoyed and creeped out, so he left it at the gate and left. I didn't eat it since I was skeptical. He came back and followed me around the store and wouldn't leave me alone until I told him off. He found my Instagram and kept texting me, then I blocked him. I will never do that again. Major red flags right here. I mean, if someone's in your store from opening to closing, yeah, that's enough to warn your friends or someone you love about. Not good. I was on a classic British holiday to the Caravan park, and behind our caravan were some derelict chalets, and they in themselves were creepy as F. All the roofs were caved in, and of course all the pipes had been stripped out, but there were still kid posters up on the walls and toys on the floor. Just looking into someone's life that had been left behind freaked me out. I was on this holiday with my friend, and we dared each other to see if he could walk furthest into the building. I went so far that I walked into the kitchen area, and I heard my friend laughing at me, so I turned around and said, "Stop laughing at me, this isn't funny." But she wasn't behind me. I ran out, and she was sitting in a chair by our caravan. I didn't tell her about what I heard and just went to bed. Later that night, I saw a bright light flash through our caravan window, and it woke both me and my mom. She thought it was just the security walking around, but then someone knocked on the door. My mom answered it, but the only thing that was there was a torn-up poster that I had seen on the wall in the chalet. I was obviously shitting myself and couldn't sleep. I think some of the other kids at the caravan park were just effing with me, but I still get shivers. I was running late to work one day, early morning around 7. I was driving down the highway to get to the interstate when I noticed a kid maybe 4 years old trying to ride his bike down the hill. I thought that's weird, but not my problem. I can't afford to be late again, someone else will help. As I drove past, I got this feeling in my gut that said, turn the F around. I turn around and I park a few feet ahead of him to meet him in the middle. I ask him what he's doing and if his parents know where he is. Naturally, he's concerned, and I tell him I'm not going to take him, and I just want to make sure he's safe, and I'm going to call the cops. I get his name and that he lives up the street in the rich area. Found out he was trying to go to the McDonald's down the hill. After I've called the cops, another car pulls up. A couple gets out, and they're clearly tweakers who live in the trailer park, which is nowhere near where this kid lives. They have missing teeth and just look like their life has nothing but poor decisions. The woman tries to act like she knows him and where he lives. When I ask her what his name is and where they live, she doesn't tell me because I could be trying to take him. I tell her no and that I've called the cops. She continues to try and push for them to take him home, even attempting to pick him up. I take out my pepper spray and say, back the F up. You didn't give me a name or where he lives. You're not taking him anywhere. I'm shaking and terrified, having this child cling to my leg at this point. Unsure if I just brought pepper spray to a gunfight, the woman backs up, says she'll wait for the cops. The guy with her is clearly uncomfortable and looks like he wants to get out of there. They waited till the cops came, and naturally, as I was talking to an officer for some reason, they let her pick him up. The boy looked incredibly uncomfortable in her arms. I told an officer I didn't think that they had good intentions and they were trying to take him before the cops got there. Told him she couldn't even give me his name, where he lived, for knowing him. I saw an officer take the kid from the woman and put him in his car. It's the only reason things didn't escalate. I was fully prepared to make sure this kid got home without these creeps knowing where. I didn't hear anything more, aside from a call that he got home safe. To this day, I'm 99% sure that I stopped a child from going missing. I hope the kid is still good and hopefully learned to go to McDonald's with his parents and not on his own. From that day, I learned to always trust my gut and never fall for the someone else will help mindset. Because despite all this shit that happens, no one else stopped. Me, a woman barely 19, was there standing up to tweakers, and no one stopped to help me or the kid. Just slowed down to see what was happening. Newly married, living on a military base. People think that all military housing is behind the wire. It's not. Usually they're just housing estates in very close proximity to camp. My husband and his CO were out doing an arms check for the local cadets. I was home alone with my then 6-month-old baby. Our home was at the bottom of a road where there was a cut that led out to a main road and towards the train station directly behind our house. It was winter, so very dark early. My dog started growling, and I could hear some sort of scraping sound. I opened the door leading into the passage where the front door was. Dog was right with me, hackles raised and getting angrier. To the side of our front door was a glass panel running the full vertical length. There's a man stood there dragging his nails down the glass and staring in. Hood up, couldn't see his face. Never screamed so loudly in my life. Now, I grew up in a shithole area, but I knew everyone and, to be honest, never felt scared. That night I was terrified. My dog was launching herself at the door. I kept it locked when home alone, and he ran. I rang my husband, who was on his way back and only 10 minutes away. Him and his CO started speeding back and called the MPs. All went searching, but found nothing. Absolutely shit me up. One thing for sure, if he somehow ever got in, I knew my doggo would put herself between me and whoever broke in. God, I miss her. I was at my room at 1 a.m. All my family members are asleep and the neighborhood is quiet, when I suddenly heard a beautiful voice of a woman singing a Filipino lullaby. I checked if my mom was awake, but she was asleep. I was creeped out and told it to my friend and even sent her a voice message of it. I had to double check the window to see if someone was just trolling with me, but I saw nothing. Later on, I heard the woman scream, and that made me run downstairs. The next morning, neighbors also talked about the lullaby and the scream. 20 plus years ago, my husband at the time and I decided to go camping on the Indian reservation in Arizona. We took our 2 dogs and drove on dirt roads for miles. We passed one car on the drive in. We were literally isolated and miles from any town. We arrived just before dark and dusk was setting in and found a place just off the road in the trees. I should add in here, both my ex and I were seasoned campers and normally very confident. We started getting camp set up and both dogs started acting strange and were growling toward the bushes and trees to the west, yet not going in to investigate like they normally do. I felt a hair on the back stand up and the back of my neck. Never have I felt the urgency to get out and get out fast. We were alone in the middle of nowhere and completely vulnerable. We both decided at the same time we needed to leave ASAP. It was now getting almost completely dark, and I was afraid at any moment someone was going to come out of the trees. We threw everything into the back of the truck, and I was literally shaking by the time we left. I didn't feel safe until we were miles down the road. Such an eerie feeling. We drove all the way home that night. We both felt we avoided something majorly dangerous that night if we would have camped there. I believe someone was out there and waiting for us to get in that tent and fall asleep. It could have been a wild animal or some wild people. Either way, follow your gut. You did the right thing. Glad you got out okay. I was young. Can't remember my exact age, but it was most likely somewhere between 8 and 10 years old. My parents took me and my siblings to someone's house for a party, and naturally, we migrated to the backyard where all the other kids were playing, because what little kids want to hang around a bunch of adults? I remember playing, and then I took a break to gaze through the woods behind the house. The next thing I know, I turned to rejoin the other children, and no one is there, and the house is different. I run to the front of the unfamiliar house, and now I'm in a different part of the neighborhood. Nervousness swells inside of me, and before I could turn to full panic, an elderly couple walks by and sees a child too young to be out on his own. Luckily, they are friends of the party hosts, and they led me back to the correct house. My mom gets angry and puts me in timeout for the rest of the time we were there. I didn't tell her what happened, as she was often incredulous about the myriad creepy, supernatural experiences that I had growing up. To this day, I've no clue what transpired, and oftentimes I think it may have wandered off, but my memory is always clear enough about these things. TLDR. I was playing in someone's backyard and unknowingly blipped to an unfamiliar location. I almost had my brother die when I was asleep. I know this might sound like my brother might have had something like a heart attack, but no. Let me explain the whole story. My brother had come home with alcohol poisoning at 3 in the morning. I had woken up to the sound of talking and had heard, "Is he going to be okay? Do we call the ambulance? We need to take him to the hospital." So naturally I woke up. Little did I know I would wake up to my brother in a comatose state and my parents around him panicking. I immediately grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Though I didn't call him because he wasn't having any difficulties. I did have them dialed in case he stopped breathing. He stopped breathing. When my parents had attempted to pick him up to drag him to the car, his breath suddenly went short. I immediately clicked the call button since I had 911 dialed in. I passed the phone to my mom because I was crying too much to speak correctly. Next thing is that the paramedics are here and checking my brother. Luckily, he didn't have much damage, just alcohol. But to this day, I don't know what I would do if that last breath he took before we picked him up would have truly been his last breath. It was either during 5th or 7th grade. I was over at my friend's house and we ended up exploring a recently cleared development with his parents' golf cart. No homes, just a bunch of roads with plumbing stacks coming out of the ground for future homes. We ended up driving past the back of the development wherein tall trees still stood along with some older homes. We noticed this guy in a truck driving back and forth just outside his garage. We thought that was a little strange, so we kept going. On our way back about 20 minutes later, the guy was still at it, back and forth in his truck. We were like, what the hell is this guy doing? So we stopped and tried to see what he was doing. There wasn't anything in this paved driveway, and after 5 minutes, we just got creeped out and left. While we were driving out of the development, the guy passed us, which scared the hell out of us. Then a minute later, he passed us again. He then began tailing us as we left the development. We finally got back to my friend's house and went inside. The guy slowed down, nearly stopping right outside my friend's driveway. We told his parents and they seemed very concerned. My mom picked me up shortly after, which was unrelated to what we had experienced, i.e. I didn't call her to pick me up sooner. I asked my friend about it the next time I saw him at school. Turns out the creepy guy had passed by his house and slowed down multiple times throughout the day after I had left. Still don't know what was up with that guy or how he knew we had seen him. I was 11 years old and was waiting for my friend in the hallway of his building to give him back the ball I borrowed. As I was waiting, the stranger came up to me while I was listening to Motorhead and started talking like, "Hi, you like this music?" He kept asking me personal questions, and it was really starting to freak me out. Nobody was around. I answered some questions I didn't think would cause me any harm. Then he asked me what is my first and last name, my date of birth, where I live. I didn't respond to him, and I just said, "My parents should be down here in a minute. Maybe you can ask them." He didn't say anything. He just got back, got his camera out, then took a couple of pictures of me and left. I wasn't aware of predators at that age. Then, when I thought about it years later, I realized what an effing psycho that was.